says, but there's something that concerns me here, and he says it's almost like you're pre-diabetic. And then he says I'm looking at some other markers that don't look good right now. And one of those, even though I was, yeah, and I know some of y'all gonna find it hard to believe, but I was still considered to be clinically obese. Right. That's what I did. I laughed when he said that. I said, what? He says, okay. He says, I know you're probably thinking, okay, well, look at me. But what he was talking about was on the inside. Okay. And as he, started going further in, he's like, yeah, I see your cholesterol is up a little bit. And he says, but there's something that concerns me here. And he says, it's almost like you're pre-diabetic. I was like, huh? He says, you're pre-diabetic. And then he, said it, and it also shows that your liver enzymes are off, and you may also have fatty liver. And I don't know if you understand what that means, where, being pre-diabetic meaning that if nothing changes, you're going to develop diabetes. That's basically what that says. And then with fatty liver disease, what that is also an indication of is the fact that there is a buildup of fat around the liver. And I think somebody's asking the question now, or is wondering, well, Pastor, where does that, how do you get that? And is that really a problem? Well, yeah, that's really a problem. And the reason why that's really a problem is because mainly what that is a sign of is too much glucose in your diet. And so, in other words, too much sugar. You're eating too much sugar. And with that, and usually it is associated with high fructose corn syrup. Y'all have heard of high fructose corn syrup, right? And high fructose corn syrup, basically, and you might say, okay, well, what's the big deal? And for those of you that are familiar, with chemistry and the makeup of cells and things like that, and you might understand that the chemical breakdown of high fructose corn syrup, it is a derivative of fructose. And what fructose is fruit's sugar. And so all fruit, natural fruit, has fructose in it. And so, of course, what the scientists have done in the lab is they've taken the fructose and they've added various other compounds to it to make it sweeter. And with it being sweeter, they then put it in various types of food. One of the main things is barbecue sauce. If you look at barbecue sauce, one of the first ingredients is usually going to be high fructose corn syrup. And so with this high fructose corn syrup, basically what it does is when you consume it, because it is so high in fructose, which again, we're talking about, if you eat an apple, you got so much fructose in an apple. But with high fructose corn syrup, instead of eating one or two apples, it's like eating maybe 60 or 70 apples. You get it? And so you get the same amount of sugar, but you don't actually eat the same amount. You only eat one little bit of something. And so then what the body's response is to that when it gets this high fructose corn syrup, and not only with high fructose corn syrup, but that's one of the main offenders of it, but with all high sugary items. And so y'all know I love my carrot cake, right? Yes, I think you do. So I love my carrot cake, and and I remember when my mom used to make that stuff, and she'd put all that refined sugar in there with all of that shortening and all of that stuff, and boy, I'd be licking the bowl and the spoon and everything else, and eating all of that kind of stuff up, and then them oatmeal cookies with that butter that comes from, I ain't gonna tell you the name of the store that somebody hooked me up with, and man, all of that stuff is just so good, right? But what happens, your body's response to all of that stuff, and whatever your thing is to release insulin. And so once the insulin is released, basically what that does is that brings down your sugar, right? And so your body's response is from your pancreas to create this insulin. What the insulin does is it drops your sugar. And so once it drops your sugar, then what happens, our body's response to it is to get tired. And so that's why most of us after lunch, what do we want to do? Get a cup of coffee, get a Coke, a Mountain Dew, or something that's going to pick us up, right? Because, we go into this lull. And so we find something, and generally it is something else sweet. And then that sends us up again. And so now our blood sugar is up again. And so our body's response is once you get so much sugar in your body, First, what your body tries to do is tries to encapsulate it and then pass it through the intestinal tract. And then if there's still too much sugar in the body, then what it tries to do is to produce the insulin to bring it down. And if the insulin is still not enough, then it goes to the liver and the liver tries to filter it out. Well, when the liver tries to filter it out, basically with the glucose, it signals the body to store fat. And so then this fat starts to store around the liver. And when it starts to store around the liver, then basically what it begins to cause is cirrhosis of the liver. And if you've ever heard of cirrhosis of the liver, basically, what that means is the liver is not functioning and doing what it's supposed to do. Typically, we hear this, when we hear people say, "Oh yeah, he's an alcoholic, she's an alcoholic," and so their liver is breaking down, and that's why they have this condition. But the thing that I want to kind of let somebody know or remind somebody is that when you talk about sugar and you talk about alcohol, basically they are the same thing. I'm gonna let that sink in for a second because somebody's like, wait, what? Sugar and alcohol are the same thing. The way that alcohol is made is they take sugar and they allow it to ferment. So if you think about wine, what they do is they take these grapes and they squeeze them, right? And they may add a little bit more sugar to it. And the more sugar they add, the stronger the wine becomes. And the longer they let it sit, that's why they're always saying, "Oh yeah, what year is this wine?" Why does it matter what year the wine is? Because then that will determine or give an idea of the fermentation process that occurs. And with fermentation, that's a process of rotting, right? And basically what happens is it is the sugar that ferments. It's the sugar that turns. And so basically that sugar begins to turn into alcohol. And so again, it has the same effect on the liver as alcohol does. And so again, what we're seeing here is this connection of how this high sugary diet is having effect on the liver of people that consume high sugar items, or this is another word to throw out there, ultra processed foods. Because a lot of this ultra processed foods has got a lot of sugar that's being added into it. And you say, "Oh, Pastor, you messing me up with this ultra processed foods and the sugar thing," because most people don't know this. Most people don't understand what the effect is of the sugar because they think, okay, well, I just like to do sweets and then I'll go exercise. It's more than exercising, okay? Because as we dig deeper into it, then what begins to happen over a period of time, after you going through so many different cycles of the ups and the downs, and if you're consistently eating a high sugary diet, then what happens is your body enters into a state that's called insulin resistance. And with insulin resistance, basically what that means is your pancreas secretes the insulin to bring down your sugar, but it doesn't respond. And your sugar stays high and stays elevated. And then at that point, it takes you into diabetes. All right. So again, thank you, everybody. We will be coming back next week. We'll be digging a little bit more. I wanted to get into the exercise aspect of it and how muscle plays a part in this, especially as we get older. Dealing with palliative care, and basically palliative care deals with as we start getting older and muscles start to get smaller, and this is where we see ourselves and our parents and grandparents start to get thinner and stuff starts breaking and falling and stuff like that. How can we change that factor so that that does not happen? And that's what we want to talk about next week. The idea of how do we build muscle in our later stages of life to help have longevity and a better stability in our life and our ability to walk and to function and do the things that we need to do. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. So I invite you to come back and to join us. We're going to have a good time. And also we're going to be talking about protein in there and how that plays a part. And also sugar will come back up again as it always does. All right.